Hello everyone and welcome. In today's video, I'll be showing you guys how to use Logic Pro's Mastering Assistant. This is a relatively new plugin released with Logic 10.8. I'd like to mention that if you are using an Intel machine or if you are running Logic in Rosetta mode on a M variant or Apple Silicon machine, you will only have access to the clean character. We'll talk about those in a moment. In case you are on an Intel machine and wondering, hey, why are the rest of these dimmed? That out of the way, let's go ahead and get started. There are two ways to access the Mastering Assistant. One is through the Mix menu from your menu bar, and the other way is through the stereo output bus in your mixer. This plugin is at the end of the chain and will always be at the end of the signal chain, no matter if you add 5, 10, or 15 plugins onto your output bus. This is because this is the final touches that you're going to do to your track before release. So this is when you are at the end, you have a good mix, you're ready to start mastering. This is where you go. I'm going to go ahead and play this track I built up out of a Native Instruments expansion called Trilla. These are just construction loops. The track is called Champagne. So on and so forth. The easiest way to instantiate this plugin is by going to the menu bar with VOM as in mic.
Menu bar, Apple.
And then hitting M as in mic.
Mix.
For the mix menu, hitting down arrow once.
Mix, show automation, A.
And then you hit up arrow 3 times.
Open, Mastering Assistant ellipsis.
There we go. So now we're going to hit enter.
Close.
And now let's give it a second.
Close.
All right, now let's talk about it. So what it just did was it analyzed our entire track and applied dynamics and EQ processing. If we play it back now, it's louder. It also switched to the transparent character because we are on a Apple Silicon machine. We have access to that. So by default, you are on the transparent character. So if I play it now, let's go ahead and view right arrow.
Stereo out, toolbar, bypass, manual, previous, next, compare, copy, paste, undo, redo, view, 100%.
This is actually the editor button. It says 100%, so let's go ahead and VO space on this.
Menu.
Down arrow once.
Controls.
And hit enter on this. There we go. We're now in controls view. We go ahead and hit VO end.
Table, row 1 of 18, reanalyze, selected.
And interact with this.
In table, row 1 of 18, reanalyze, selected, reanalyze.
So this is the reanalyze button. If you hit this, it'll actually reanalyze your entire song. So this is what it was doing. So what the Mastering Assistant does is applies the best dynamics, EQ, and width processing to your track that it feels best fits with your song. If there is a certain section that you want to process, you can actually enable the cycle range for that part, and you're able to then process, say, the loudest part, which is what a lot of people do anyway, is process the loudest part of their song. But this just processes the entire thing and just goes from there. We're now able to touch up the mix some more, and we're able to set things to our liking. I don't touch this reanalyze button or the mode button below.
Mode, processing. Bypass, unchecked.
So there's a bypass here, and then below that,
Loudness compensation, unchecked.
there's a loudness compensation button. This is actually to combat loudness bias. What that is our ears automatically think louder is better. If we check this loudness compensation button, it's actually going to turn down the audio to the level it was before we applied the Mastering Assistant. So I'm going to hit play, and I'm just going to toggle between
Check. Unchecked.
So let's go ahead and check it.
Check.
And now we can go to the bypass.
Bypass, unchecked. Check.
And now we can hear more accurately what the Mastering Assistant is doing to our track. So if we uncheck it, we hear that it's applying dynamics, processing. We hear the EQ moves that it's doing more accurately.
Checked.
Versus trying to hear it with the jump in audio levels. So if we check it, uncheck it, excuse me, we hear it's a little brighter. We hear that the dynamics are kicking in a bit, and we hear that it's got a little less low end, scooped a little of the low end out. It just tried to give us what I think is a more neutral characteristic. So we can now
Loudness compensation, checked.
Uncheck this loudness compensation.
Unchecked.
So turn it off.
Character, transparent.
And then this is where we get to the characters. Let me go ahead and read to you guys an excerpt from the Logic Pro manual. Mastering Assistant allows you to choose the character of the processing applied to your project. The character presets change the sonic qualities of Mastering Assistant, inspired by hardware mastering chains used by professional recording engineers. So we have Clean, an algorithm that offers a transparent yet punchy result. This style is good for EDM, acoustic music, and anything that needs clean yet punchy sound. Valve, an algorithm that simulates a processing chain utilizing tubes to deliver a deep low end and refined high end, making it a great option for both acoustic music and the hip hop genre. Punch, an algorithm that embodies aggressive sound with a subtle emphasis on the mid-range frequencies, ideally suited for rock music. Transparent, an algorithm inspired by a modern and tight sounding compressor suitable for most genres of music. That's what the characters do, but honestly, if it sounds good, use it. So let's go ahead and take you guys through these. You've already heard transparent, so let's go ahead and start there. And then I'm going to go ahead and switch to clean. So transparent.
Menu, clean.
Now we'll switch to clean.
Character, clean.
As you can hear, it did really get punchier. Now our dynamic is actually kicking in and bringing the pads down.
Menu, checkmark, valve.
And now we're going to switch to valve.
Character, valve. Menu, punch.
And now punch.
Character, punch. Menu, valve. Character, valve.
Honestly, like valve the best for this one. Let's stick with valve. And if we go down,
Custom EQ, checked.
we have the custom EQ. So the custom EQ is actually a low shelf, a mid-band filter, and a high shelf. So what that means is that
Low frec, 100.0 Hz, 60.
right now, the low frequency is at 100 Hertz and the gain is at 0. There's nothing affecting the frequencies at the moment. So these gain knobs have 12 dB in total of range. So we have -6 to +6. And when you're mastering, a lot of your moves are subtle. Very, very subtle. At this point, you got a really good static mix. You're doing little moves. So at the point where 0.5 of a decibel can make a difference for what you're trying to do. I've been there before. A dB is just a bit too much. So you just back it down and it ends up being, 0.4, 0.6, 0.5. At that point, you just really have to trust your gut and your intuition to know what sounds good. Since this is a shelf, what you're affecting is everything below 100 Hertz. So for example,
Low in, 0.0 in slider.
I'm going to go ahead and set this gain to -6.
Minus.
And as you can hear, the low end is significantly lower now. But if we set it to +6,
Minus.
it's kind of overpowering now. So I'm going to go ahead and actually go to 9 bars.
Go to position, wind, table.
Go to the meat of the song.
Link, unchecked. Table. In table. Row 8 in. 6.0 decibel. In slider.
Let's go ahead and
Out of slider. Out of. Low frec. 100 in slider.
move this around and see what sounds good.
90. 74.14.
Keep it exaggerated.
70. 52.48 Hz. 51.29 Hz. 50.12 Hz.
So now I'm down at 50. So anything below 50 is getting boosted by 6 dB. If we move all the way to 200, that is very overpowering. Jeez. Let's go ahead and move this to something a bit more reasonable.
141.6. 107.4 Hz. 109.9 Hz. 115.1 Hz. 112.5 Hz. 115.1 Hz. Low gain. 6 in slider.
I like 115, so let's go ahead and adjust this low gain here.
5.
See, now down at -6, now that we've boosted it by 15 Hertz, you can see it sounds a little thinner.
Low frag. 150 in slider.
Let's go back up to 200.
100.
So yeah, now everything below 200, which is your lows, is being cut by 6 dB. Let's go ahead and move it down to 115 again.
195. 115.1 hertz.
There we go.
Auto, low gain. Minus 6 in slider.
And let's
minus 1. 0.0 decibel.
put it back at 0. Let's go ahead and try to dial this in.
Minus 2.0 decibels. 1.0 decibels. 0 minus 1. Minus 2.0 decibels. 2.0 decibels.
Yeah, I like the sound of plus 2 dB here.
Auto, mid frag, 998.9 hertz, 43 mid gain, 0.0 dec in slider.
Mid frequency. This is actually a filter. It picks up from where the low frequency leaves off, so it actually will sweep between 200 hertz to 8K or 8,000 kilohertz. The high, same deal. It will sweep from 8K to 20K. Each of these kind of pick up where the other one left off, from low to high. So this is a mid-band filter. If we
minus 1.0, 0.0 decibels.
Go ahead and reduce this
minus
by 6. A lot of those mids are cut, so let's
minus
boost it plus 6. So you can actually hear that synth.
Auto, mid frag, 909 in slider. 1.003 kilo, 1.040 kilohertz.
Let's see if we can sweep it around.
644.6, 803.5 hertz, 7, 208, 200, 400, 200, 360.300, 541.5 hertz, 500, 5.6, 7, 2.2, 467, 701.0 hertz. Auto, mid gain, 6 in 4, 2, 1.0 dec, minus 1.0 decibels.
There we go. I kind of like what it's doing here, and I can just reduce that a little bit.
Minus 2.0 decibels.
Maybe I'll do minus 2. Or we could go the other direction
1.0 decibels.
and do a plus 1, which is majorly EQ move.
Auto, mid 700, 800, 1.0, 900, 1.014 kilohertz.
And it's usually around here where I tend to boost that a little bit.
Auto, mid gain, 2.0 decibels. 1.0 decibels. Minus 1.0 decibels. 1.0 decibels. 0.6 decibels. 0.5 decibels. Minus 0.5 decibels.
I think that's okay there.
Auto slider. Auto. High frag. 8.000 kilohertz. High gain. 0 points in slider.
So this isn't usually how I do stuff, but let's go ahead and do the same thing with the high shelf.
Minus.
So this is minus 6.
Minus.
This is plus 6, and that's very, very bright.
Auto. High frag. 8.0 in slider.
So let's go ahead and sweep this up.
10.92 kilo. 11. 18.18. 19. 14.25 kilohertz. 14. 10.34 kilohertz. 11.13 kilohertz. 11.23 kilohertz. 12.42 kilohertz. 13.61, 13.7, 14.25 kilohertz. 14.12 kilohertz. 14.12 kilohertz. Auto high gain. 6 in slider.
Kind of like what it's doing at 14.12. So let's go ahead and keep it there.
1.0 decibels. 0.0.
Bring it down to unity or neutral.
Minus 1.0 decibels.
Question is, do I want to make it darker?
1.0 decibels.
Or make it a little brighter?
2.0 decibels. Minus 1.0 decibels. Minus 2.0 decibels. 2.0 decibels.
I think I like it at plus 2 dB.
Auto slider. Auto width plus 0.10, 55%.
This is another thing that the mastering assistant will do for you, is adjust your width depending on what it thinks is a good stereo image. If your soundstage is too narrow, it'll try to widen that. If it's too wide, it will narrow that. You can adjust this yourself.
In plus 0.10. Width plus in 0.00.
So this is regular. And then you can also put it all the way to the left to get a mono signal. Or all the way to the right, and it'll be very, very wide, and I don't like that.
Plus 0.10.
I actually don't use a lot of width stuff anymore. I used to give a very wide soundstage, but I don't do it anymore. It doesn't sound good to me. Like, this sounds fine.
Plus 0.20.
If we push it to 0.20, that actually sounds okay too. If we really wanted to go middle of the road,
Plus 0.14. Plus 0.15.
there we go. Went a little too far there. We can do hold VoiceOver and then hit shift and then hit left arrow to adjust by smaller increments, by ones. I actually like 0.15, so we'll go ahead and keep it there.
Auto width. Auto EQ. 100%. 50%.
Auto EQ is
In 100 in slider.
you're adjusting how much of the EQ processing that the mastering assistant did. If we put this all the way to 200, it kind of brings some of that mid-range forward. I'm not too big a fan of that, so let's go ahead and dial it back down here.
100%. 90. 80%. 70%. 50%.
Actually, 50 might sound good.
60%. 70%. 50%.
We'll do 50.
Auto. Excite. Unchecked.
Excite adds saturation to the top end, so what I mean by that is, well, exactly that.
Checked.
So as you can hear, the hat's a little brighter now.
Unchecked. Checked.
I really like that sound. More often than not, I will actually reach for the saturator. I think there was only one time where I didn't.
Loudness. 0.00. 50%.
This is where I will talk about LUFS, or LUFS. LUFS is beyond the scope of this video. There's loads and loads of resources on the internet that talk about what it is, what it stands for, and why it's important. It is important. At 0, your LUF level is at -14 integrated. What that means is that it's where most streaming services have volume set at, is -14 LUFS. Spotify does it. I think Apple Music's the same. YouTube is like -15 or -10, something. But -14 seems to be the target. And of course, if we move this up or down, we can now make this louder. It's not affecting our volume per se, because we are essentially limiting, with the dynamics processing that the mastering assistant is doing, we're limiting our track from peaking. We can push this up.
In. Loudness. 0.0. In slider.
So right now it's at -14 LUFS.
Plus 0.10.
0.10 starts to squash it a little bit.
Plus 0.20. Plus 0.50.
And see at 0.50, it's very loud and very, very compressed. It doesn't sound good.
Plus.
That is a brick wall at this point. Jeez, that is too loud. So let's go ahead and move it back down
Plus
to
0.10. 0.00.
0. Of course, you can use the VoiceOver shift left and right arrows to fine tune your value even more.
Plus 0.10. Plus 0.06. Plus 0.05.
I put it at 0.05. At 10, it starts to do this little pumping thing where it brings that pad down. I think it still does it at 0.5. Let me. Not as much.
Plus 0.03. Plus 0.02. Plus 0.12. Plus 0.02.
3 is where it kind of starts to be noticeable. 0.2 is fine. This track was already brought up in loudness. Just adding to that loudness eventually will make it pump, as we heard when it was at 100. This is just to set your final level, your LUFS, to something louder. Depending on what kind of song you're working on, it may need plus 10 or plus 20. Again, this plugin is to get past the finish line there. Below the loudness slider are the buttons that correspond to your LUFS meter, which is actually accessible in editor view. So in the default view, when you open up the project, if you don't have your plugins automatically switch into controls view, you can go and take a look. So the order of the numbers are M, S, and I. So M stands for momentary, S stands for short, and I stands for integrated. LUFS is actually beyond the scope of this video. There's lots of resources on the internet you can go take a look at, read up on what LUFS is and why it's important. A target of -14 is what Spotify's looking for. I mean, that's the thing, is like, you can bring it up louder. I mean, the release that I have on Spotify is at -9, and it's fine. A lot of people do bring up stuff louder, and I think there's kind of a guideline to follow when you're making music, because certain genres go better with certain LUFS. This is all open to interpretation, and you don't have to follow the rule if you don't want to. That's the thing about music. It's as limitless as you want it to be. This concludes the video. Thank you so much for watching, and as we say here at Logic Band, happy recording.